All right, so hey, I guess congratulations are in order. If you're smart enough to have a generator on hand, then you're doing better than the majority of Americans at being ready for a relatively common but potentially devastating situation. So according to this 2022 study, about 15% of Americans have a generator on hand for emergencies. 15%, that's it. So for every 100 people in your area, only 15 are sporting some kind of standalone power. That's a pretty crazy number when you consider how dependent we are on electrical conveniences. So having a generator on hand is smart and shows you're capable of logical and critical thought. Good job. But you know what's even smarter? Knowing how to maintain it so you can keep your investment in common sense working for you for as long as possible. So let's go over what it takes to stay on top of keeping your generator running so it can help keep you calm when things get stupid out there. Hey, I'm Tori. Welcome to Omega Ready. We don't just focus on being ready for stuff. We try and expand on the topic by educating others on how to maintain the things that they depend on. You need to be able to care for the things that take care of you. So I'm going to start with a very high-level overview of how a generator works, its key components and such. If you're advanced enough and know the basics, I suggest you skip ahead to the technical aspects of my review on maintenance. If you're not sure, then stick around. You might actually learn something that helps you. So, with that said, let's get to it. All right, so this beast here is a generator. Why is it called a generator? Well, pretty simple. It generates electricity. This generator consists of an engine, a generator head, and a frame that holds it all together, and a control panel. The size and power output of the engine will determine the size of the generator head and its corresponding output of electricity. This generator is rated at 5,500 watts with the capability of handling 8,250 watts momentarily. This is a handy feature that most generators have and accommodates the spike in electrical demand that occurs when you first turn on an electrical device like a well pump or an air conditioner or a sump pump. An engine-driven generator will be controlled by something called a governor. A governor's job is to keep the engine running at the correct RPM, regardless of the applied load. What is a load? Well, in this case, load is the electrical load that you apply to the generator by you plugging things in. When you do that, the governor ensures that the engine stays at the correct RPM to generate electricity for you to use. If you listen carefully to it, you can usually hear the generator start to work harder when you apply a load to it. So most residential generators run at one speed. That's important to know because everything in the system is designed to run well at that one speed. So any problems with your fuel or air filtration system will likely result in the engine surging or being low on power. A surge is when the engine is having a hard time maintaining its governed RPM and it starts to drop RPMs and then tries to recover those RPMs, and it usually goes into a cycle that's called surging. Low power will show up in the same way, but sometimes it may show itself as an overload condition, even though you're below the total wattage of the generator's capacity. So now that you understand the very basics, let's get to reviewing how to maintain the generator. So the first thing on my list is the owner's manual. In addition to teaching you about your generator, the owner's manual will provide you with the maintenance schedule that you should follow. If you don't have an owner's manual, then search up your generator by its model name and its model number. The model number is usually found on a sticker or metal plate somewhere on the frame of the generator. Print out a copy and put it in a smart place like this uniquely ugly binder I'm using. It will give you helpful information like specifications, replacement part numbers, and useful tips on operational capabilities. Use the last page to document your service history and keep it up to date so you know exactly where you stand on your maintenance. Number 2, starting system. You will either have a pull cord or a battery. Pull cord inspection is easy. Just slowly pull the starting cord out and check the rope for any excessive wear. Excessive fretting or cuts in the rope are a sign that you should change the rope out. Also check that the pull handle is in good shape and that the knot used to hold the rope into the handle is good and tight. If you have a battery-equipped generator, it would be wise to keep it on a trickle charger or start and run it at defined intervals. Check for corrosion and cable quality. Clean or replace these items if you find anything wrong, because a generator that won't start will only generate yelling from your wife. Number 3 is fresh fuel and fuel stabilizer. How much fuel should you have on hand? That's going to be different for everyone. But you should know that generators usually eat a good amount of fuel. Review your owner's manual and it should give you a rough idea of the fully loaded and partially loaded fuel consumption of your generator. Knowing this info and how big your fuel tank is will give you a rough idea how long you can expect a tank of fuel to last you. Having a full tank and a few gallons of backup fuel is the bare minimum starting point, in my opinion. Fuel stabilizer is good to have mixed into your fuel as well, as it will extend the shelf life of your fuel. Use some painter's tape and document when you last filled the tank. If it's older than a year, then consider using it elsewhere and topping it off with fresh fuel. Okay, so number 4, visual inspection. Give everything a good once-over. Most people think that because a generator sits a lot, that it will always be ready for use when they need it. Sadly, most people are idiots, especially with regards to internal combustion engines, so you shouldn't listen to them. Dirt and dust, vermin, and even kids can all play havoc on a stationary generator. So don't take anything for granted and inspect the following items as part of your basic maintenance plan. All fasteners and mounts are tight. Grab a set of sockets and wrenches and just go over visible fasteners to ensure they're tight. Generators are not exactly smooth running machines and things can vibrate loose on you. Fuel cap, check that it's functional and tight. Make sure one of your kids didn't decide to store some dandelions in the fuel tank. Check the fuel line and that it isn't showing signs of cracking or wear. Replace it if you see any signs of damage. If you find signs of wear, determine the source and either reroute the line or add a cool sacrificial wear sleeve to it. Engine air inlet is obstruction free. I see signs of mice putting corn in my air intake tract all the time. Keep that stuff clean. Exhaust system, make sure it's not rusty or loose. Check that the spark arrestor screen is there, and if it's rusting badly or gone, replace it. Have hot exhaust problems is a terrible idea when a generator is running unattended in close proximity to your house. Wiring, make sure that no rodents have been chewing on your wires. They can get into tight spots and cause damage to wiring, as well as packing debris in hard to see spots like in the cooling path or even the air filter. Electrical outlets can collect dust and even get packed with mud from mud wasps. Try to keep a childproof electrical socket cover on to ensure they are clean and ready to use. Okay, number 5 is the cooling system. You have 2 cooling systems to consider, the engine and the generator head. Most residential generators are air-cooled small engines. They use a fan that's located behind the fan shroud to force air around the engine, which pulls the heat away. Make sure that the front cover is clear and clean, and then grab an air compressor and an air wand to force some high pressure air into the fan blades to clear them off. Then inspect for any obstructions on the outlet sides. Inspect around sheet metal, plastic. Better yet, if you have the skill, take the fan shroud off and thoroughly clean it. The generator head also has a fan that pulls air from the front cover through the generator head and pushes it out here. You can use compressed air again to clean these areas. Remember, these things get hot when in use, and while heat is a normal byproduct of combustion and friction in the generator system, excessive heat can shorten the lifespan of components. So keep it clean. Okay, number 6, the engine. Let's start with the air path. Pull the air cleaner and inspect the filter. If it's dirty, clean or replace it. Inspect for any signs of debris in the air path and remove it. Any signs of dust on the carb, better make sure the filter isn't torn or isn't correctly seated. Pull the spark plug, check its condition. Replace it if it's worn out, and don't forget to check the gap. Also, how's that ignition coil wire look? So before we do an oil change, I want to talk to you a little bit about the fuel system quickly. Your fuel system on these generators is usually quite simple. It consists of a tank, a hose to deliver the fuel to the carburetor, and that's it. In a perfect world, that's all you'd need, but in the real world, you should have 2 additional components to ensure that your engine runs clean. Number 1 is a fuel filter. For some reason, not every generator comes equipped with a fuel filter. Based on my experience, this is the primary cause of getting debris into your carb and either plugging up the fuel supply, causing a sticky needle that will cause the carb to flood the engine with gas, or lastly, it'll plug up the internal orifice in the carb, causing a surging condition. To address any of these issues usually means the carb has got to come off and get rebuilt. So save yourself the time, money, and headache of adding a simple fuel filter. You can determine what size you need by inspecting the fuel line to see what inside diameter you have to buy the correct filter. You need a pair of hose clamps to go with that as well. Most small filters fit in line and don't require any new routing or support. This is my filter. I added it and it's performed perfectly since. The second thing every fuel system should have is a shutoff valve. This allows you to keep fuel from sitting in the carb where it can break down over time and creates deposits that will prevent fuel from metering correctly through the carb. Again, like the filter, if your generator doesn't already have one, you can buy one for a few bucks and save yourself a lot of problems down the road. This leads me to the last reason to use a fuel shutoff valve, the cool down period. As I said earlier, the generator makes a lot of heat, especially when you're loading it heavy. The heat saturates into the engine and the generator head and needs time to dissipate when you're done using it. So when you're done, you should allow it to run for a few minutes under no load to allow the engine fan and gen head fan to push the extra heat out of the engine. The fuel shutoff valve will act as a safety to ensure you give it cool down time. The correct way to shut a generator off is by simply shutting the fuel valve and letting the carb run out of fuel. After you shut it, it will run normally for a little bit, but will eventually start to surge, then sputter, then shut off. This doesn't hurt anything and will ensure that you've given the cooling system some time to get rid of that heat. The next time you need it, you just turn the valve back on and give it a second to fill the fuel up and it'll start right up. Last item is the oil change. Don't screw around here. Use your manual to determine what oil your manufacturer recommends and run a high quality synthetic oil to ensure you have some cooling buffer. Power outages here in Michigan can happen year-round, but I know that I use my generator probably about 80% of the time in summer conditions where bad storms mean I'm using my generator for days or weeks on occasion. Summer heat and extended use mean my oil head better be damn good or I risk cooking it and building deposits in my engine. So don't skip here. Go with the quality synthetic stuff. The process is straightforward. To change your oil, your manual will tell you what kind of oil, what filter if you have one, and how much you need. Step 1 is to run your engine first to get it to operating temperature. Find the drain plug, place a tray underneath it, and drain it out. Plug back in and tight, fill it up with oil, check your level, and you're done. Swap the filter if you have one. All right, so that's it. Follow these basic steps and you will go a long way towards keeping your generator investment working for you for a long time. We bought this rig here back in 2011 and have used it on average about 50 hours a year. And it has not let us down yet. We paid about $550 for it and it's still going strong in 2024. I don't care where you're from, that's a good deal. I'll have some other videos coming out shortly on some upgrades we planned on this rig. Because why not mess with something that's been working flawlessly for 13 years? What could go wrong? What could I screw up? So, look for those videos and we'll see you next time.